from our 7 Tasmania studios. Your nightly news with Kim Miller begins now.
Tasmania's opposition wants confirmation a project to add a 5th lane to Hobart's southern outlet will still go ahead. The state government says it will seek federal funding to complete the extension to Kingston.
This is a project we've seen promised since 2018. It was supposed to solve traffic issues. They've wasted millions of dollars. This should never ever have happened.
We are seeking federal support for it. Labor at the recent election actually said that they would not do this project and that they would bank the savings.
A handful of homes have already been acquired to make way for the build. Fire has caused damage to a Mowbray property. Crews from Rochely and Launceston attended the house on Evermay Road at 5 a.m. A section of the road between Fock and Beatty Streets was closed during the incident and was reopened around 2 hours later. The Health Minister has intervened after revelations some health workers haven't received back pay for a mask allowance agreed to last December. Nurses and midwives required to wear N95 masks for long periods are entitled to an extra payment. The union says working with the department on the issue has been frustrating.
We haven't been able to get definitive timeframes. There's been difficulty in terms of actually even establishing a mechanism for payment of this allowance.
We are funding the extra allowance, so we want to see it being received by the people who are entitled to it, and we expect it to be sorted out ASAP.
The union is threatening to take the matter to the Tasmanian Industrial Commission if the issue isn't resolved. Tasmania's peak racing body says it will continue to fund its program which cares for retired greyhounds. Australia is one of the last remaining countries that still supports the sport, with animal welfare advocates calling for the industry to be shut down.
Tony has been caring for retired greyhounds for 14 years, 102 dogs without a single cent in return.
Some of them haven't raced at all, and others have won lots of races, so they're all different.
She's a foster carer registered with Tas Racing's Greyhound adoption program, looking after one dog for a few weeks before it finds a forever home.
I just like to know that they're going to a good home.
It's a particularly critical part of our behavioural adjustment post-racing and readiness for moving into a domestic and loving home.
But the program hasn't been without controversy, with animal welfare advocates calling for it to be defunded.
This industry overbreeds dogs, races them until they're exhausted, disposes of them when they're not profitable anymore.
We'll very much continue to invest in the program and, as I say, only increase our funding toward providing the best post-racing welfare outcomes that we can.
Independent MP Christy Johnston believes the sport needs to be banned altogether.
There is no world in which greyhound racing can be ethical or kind. We know that we're doing this kind of thing just for entertainment and for gambling purposes.
We're very, very mindful of making sure that throughout their life cycle, pre-racing, racing and indeed rehoming afterwards, that our dogs are given the best care possible.
For Tony, she says she'll continue to foster greyhounds.
They get fed, they have a nice bed, that's all they need.
Providing a little love and affection, one dog at a time. Lily Thompson, 7 Tasmanian News.
Tasmanians impacted by a gambling addiction are being urged to have their say over a proposed pokies player card, which would see time and money limits in place to help curb the bad habit. If passed, Tasmania will become the first state to introduce a mandatory scheme.
That means that people will have so much more control over how much money they're going to risk losing to poker machines. And that's a really key factor when we're talking about a machine that's designed to be addictive.
Tasmanians lost over $16 million in pokie losses in July this year alone. Launceston Council is vowing to work with homelessness charities after voting to refuse permission for sleeping pods and showers to be located on council land.
We surveyed in real depth and complexity around over 300 locations that these pods could potentially go to, and we found that due to topography, zoning, the outlay of other assets that are around those areas, that there weren't any suitable.
Council says it would have borne the legal risk and that charities strike it out had been asked for more information numerous times. A seed from a ginkgo tree which survived the devastating Hiroshima bombing will now call a Hobart park home. It's to remind the community of the importance of peace while providing a bittersweet link to the past.
This young ginkgo sapling now stands tall in Hobart's Peace Park after its monumental arrival back in 2019.
And I remember physically getting them out of letterbox and thinking this is pretty precious cargo.
The seeds descending from a tree which survived the atomic bombing of Hiroshima back in 1945. After nearly 5 years, it's finally ready to be permanently planted.
It's a very special tree for the people of Japan and for the community of Hiroshima to symbolise that peace can survive even through the most difficult of wars.
Local community and schools helping settle the sapling into its new home, offering paper cranes and a helping hand on the eve of the United Nations International Day of Peace.
What dreadful damage these nuclear weapons do. So many people killed, a whole city destroyed with one bomb, which is very small compared to the weapons available today.
With 8 more seeds currently being propagated by council, there are plans for more ginkgo trees to be placed across the city.
Hoping to put it in all the major parks in Hobart, Princess Park, the Rose Gardens, St David's Park.
A hopeful reminder of peace for the next few hundred years. Ruby Cairns, 7 Tasmania News.
Part of the car park at Parliament House has been transformed into a parklet today, showcasing the potential to repurpose existing lots across the city into social spaces. The setup complete with refreshments, books, music and games.
It's really about how we use our urban spaces, and the Greens want to see a lot more transition from car parks and car parking spaces into livable urban spaces.
Car parking spaces don't have to be car parking spaces. They can be more, and it allows us to reimagine that public space and think of other uses we want for it.
The initiative also aiming to encourage locals to ditch the car for bicycles or walking. There's an urgent call for young Tasmanians to become bone marrow donors with a critical shortage of registered recipients. Patients on lengthy wait lists are depending on overseas donations.
Father of 2, Mark Reid was fit, healthy and enjoying his life, but this all changed after receiving news he thought he'd never hear.
Told that I had leukemia, so it came completely out of nowhere.
The crushing diagnosis came in 2019 after a routine blood test. He had acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
Devastating. Still get a bit emotional about it now.
More than 19,000 Australians are expected to be struck down with various forms of blood cancer this year, with 20% of those needing a stem cell transplant to survive.
Stem cell transplants are one of those last options that people can take in order to survive.
Thankfully, Mark was given the gift of life after receiving a bone marrow donation.
That treatment, I stayed in Melbourne for 100 days.
But for many, the journey to receive a suitable donor match can be grim, with some cancer patients on waitlist for up to a year.
There's about 1,000 people on the waitlist, and sometimes people die being on the waitlist.
A significant lack of stem cell donors in Australia means many are dependent on overseas donors, which can compromise their chances of beating the often deadly disease.
We are going to Europe to look for donors. By the time you get the match and then track the person down, and valuable time is lost.
Prompting calls for young Australians to give others like Mark the chance of survival.
You'll save a life.
Those aged between 18 and 35 are considered the most suitable.
And the evidence suggests that the outcomes are better if we're using younger donors.
Anyone who is able to register as a donor can head to strength.giveorg.au or the Leukemia Foundation. Rebecca Gaidaneris at 7 Tasmania News.
Tasmanians have donned their best and brightest yellow attire for the Cancer Council's annual Unite in Yellow fundraiser. This year's lunch canvassing much needed local funds while holding extra importance for Tasmania's 2024 Australian of the Year.
My beautiful mother-in-law Jennifer lost her battle with cancer in July this year. Whether you're going through it or you know someone going through it, we're all affected by this.
It'll help us continue delivering our education and prevention programs in schools and communities, and it also helps us invest back into cancer research.
The Cancer Council hope to raise $30,000. One of the most successful senior coaches in AFL history has praised the efforts of those behind Tasmania's upcoming team. Attending a lunch in Hobart, Alist Clarkson used the success of the Jack Jumpers as an example of the way in which sport can flourish on the national stage.
It just shows if you do get people together and galvanise a whole state, like what's been able to happen with the Jack Jumpers and what the Tassie Devils are trying to do, then anything can happen.
More than 200,000 people have signed up to be a Devils member, the highest of any club in the league. Former Premier Peter Gutwin has announced he's marching on Canberra to shine a spotlight on the contributions of migrants to Australia, lacing up his runners for a 330-kilometre trek, first to Launceston Airport and then from Sydney to the nation's capital.
Because I firmly believe, as a migrant myself, that education leads to understanding.
The new challenge coming after the success of June's Better Together walk. Tasmanians from migrant and refugee backgrounds will join in for stretches of the journey.
But I reckon overall it gave a bit of appreciation and acceptance of all the work done by migrants in Tasmania over the years.
The walk begins on October 1. We're getting our first look at designs for the James Bogue Visitor Centre before a $1.8 million renovation. Renamed Bogue's Brewhouse, it will add a beer garden and wall of historic cans.
It's a beautiful building, heritage building as it is, but we're going to make it a lot more contemporary. All the museum will move downstairs where the current hospitality is, and we'll move that outside.
The Visitors Centre has over the years been one of Launceston's most important visitor destinations.
The state government is chipping in $1 million as part of an election commitment. As more people choose to be cremated after they pass away, Launceston's Car Villa is performing twice as many cremations as burials. To make sure they can keep taking good care of loved ones' remains, Council's almost finished a major overhaul of the decades-old cremator.
This machine was first installed in 1985, and over the years it has had some minor, not significant refurbishments.
The refurbishment should add 20 years to its service operation. Eagle-eyed skywatchers have had the chance to spot a brand new craft in the air above Launceston today, a multi-million-dollar helicopter flying in, with hopes the new machine will help northern Tasmanian tourism take off.
From the sunny skies above Maroochydore, a wet welcome to Tasmania for the Airbus H130. With a 2-year wait for the new helicopter, it's a highly anticipated flight for entrepreneur Errol Stewart.
Yeah, you know, picking it up yesterday and just opening the doors the first time round was just like picking up my first car.
Arriving in Launceston today after 2 days of flying down Australia's east coast. How's the new helicopter smell?
Oh, well, it's just like any new thing, isn't it? If you get a new car, the new leather is just fantastic.
Boasting state-of-the-art technology and an extended flight range, it offers the ability to take sightseers truly off the beaten track.
Right up through the Forth River, right to the centre of Tasmania, it's just an enormous vista.
Its first official passengers have already booked their flight on a quick ground tour today ahead of taking to the air tomorrow. But there's big dreams for what this machine can bring to Tasmania's hospitality sector.
Now, if we could afford it, we'd like to build some other hotels out the coast and have the ability to take people from place to place.
Taking tourism to new heights. Annie Green, 7 Tasmanian News.
The travel-weary and injury-depleted Jack Jumpers are looking forward to a week of rest after opening the NBL season with a loss. A third-quarter surge seeing Melbourne United take revenge in the championship rematch. In front of a sold-out Hoopfest crowd.
And that'll be your ball game.
The number of frequent flyer miles the Jackies have accumulated of late came back to bite.
We started this journey probably 3.5 weeks ago in Burnie in the north of Tasmania and worked our way for 8 days down through the middle of the state and then got on a plane to the Gold Coast and then got on another plane to Singapore and down to here.
Despite decrying the hectic schedule earlier this week, the coach isn't blaming the travel for the 9-point loss.
Our foul discipline is the first thing. It's been our Achilles heel for 3 years and 29 foul shots is a recipe for death, but in general, extremely proud of my staff and everyone that's gone through the last 3 weeks.
Keeping within range of last year's runners-up all night, Milton Doyle outshot Matt Dellavedova to be highest scorer on court. Replacement player Lockie Barker landing a three-pointer from his only shot during 13 minutes game time. The team now finally back home with a few days to rest, not playing again until Saturday next week.
Can't wait to go see the fam and just hang out with the kids, hang out with the wife, and yeah, just chill out for a couple of days.
The club's injury woes may be exacerbated, Will Magnay appearing to suffer a head knock. As for whether Craig Sword will return next week from his concussion,
I'm not qualified to make that diagnosis. If I was, I would not be here. I'd be a doctor making a lot more money.
Yeah, he wasn't giving much away at that press conference. Having played in the last 6 NWFL deciders, Devonport are going for their 4th straight premiership against Wynyard on Saturday. There's only 3 players still around from the start of the run in 2019. The club putting their continued success down to their depth through juniors, and they're confident again for tomorrow.
We've only dropped the 1 game so far, and yeah, I think that was just a reminder and wake-up call that we needed. And since then, I think, yeah, we've been playing some pretty good football.
They play 2:20 tomorrow at Latrobe. Tasmania's richest bowls pairs event is getting even richer. The nation's top competitors and even a few from overseas are heading to East Launceston in the first week of October for the Trident. The prize money doubling in its second year to $20,000.
Certainly been a carrot dangled and the people have followed, and now we're able to offer more, which is good. The level of competition is something that we don't typically see here in Tasmania, so the people competing are competing at what would be recognised as national level.
With live music, it should also be quite a party. And in a one-of-a-kind footy game, the best players from King Island have flown into Devonport, where they're currently playing the Rice Island Flatheads at Girdleston Park in their first time playing under lights. The Flatties are a rather unusual team as a Masters outfit based around Devonport who come out and play every now and then. But at this stage, they're dishing out quite a hiding, leading 54-7 at half-time. Yeah, looks like it'd be quite a treat for the fans there, Kim.
It does. I hope there's a physio on hand. Thank you, Nick. Jackie Harvey will join us after the break with a weekend weather forecast.
Good evening. 15 in Devonport today, while Hobart, Launceston and Burnie all reached 14 degrees. 17 was the state's top in Friendly Beaches, 14 across Flinders Island and Grove and Strawn, reaching a high of 12. A frontal cloud band pushed over Tasmania today from the west, with clouds seen scattered across the east of the state. Further out, cloud can be seen building over the north of the continent and along the Queensland coast. Tomorrow, a cold front is expected to be moving away from Tasmania while another approaches the state from the southwest. Westerly winds tomorrow 20 to 30 knots, reaching 40 knots about the south and northeast. Swells up to 7 metres in the west and south and up to 4 metres in the north. A gale warning is current for the central north coast, Flinders Island, south, east coast and west coast. A strong wind warning for the Channel, southwest lakes and the east coast. And a minor flood warning for the Derwent River. Tomorrow's forecast now: Hobart, a late shower or 2, showers in Medina, Oatlands, a shower or 2. In the north, cloudy in Launceston, a shower or 2 in Devonport, Lyweenie, showers and potentially snow. Burnie, tomorrow, a shower or 2, showers in Strawn, windy with showers in Marrow. St Helens and Swansea 15 and partly cloudy in Orford. Looking ahead to the 3-day forecast now: Sunday showers mostly about the west and north. Monday showers across the west and north, easing in the afternoon. And Tuesday fine with showers developing about the west and north. Capital cities 22 and sunny in Perth tomorrow. Melbourne a morning shower or 2 and 25 in Sydney. And currently Hobart mostly cloudy and 10, Launceston 10 and Devonport windy and 10 degrees. That's all in weather tonight, Kim, and I know what you're thinking, but I'm sorry, improving the weather, it's not in my job description. I'm going to HA and then it's not good enough. HR, I'm calling you. And that is all your news for this Friday. Enjoy the footy and enjoy your weekend. Good night.